At 10 o'clock local time, U.S. troops were tracking cartel smugglers who had made a critical mistake in the Eastern Pacific. Their boat was running at 50 knots. A normal fishing vessel doesn't go beyond 12, so they clearly weren't fishermen. They were fleeing, unaware that they had been under surveillance for more than 2 hours. The crew felt confident. They had done that run 18 times before, same route, same boat, and with bribes already paid. The helmsman checked the GPS. They were on schedule. Under blue tarps, they carried a cargo worth $42 million to be split among 5, minus the cartel's cut, about $2 million per man, enough to disappear forever. 4 Mercury outboard engines at full throttle pushed the craft across an empty ocean, 140 miles off the coast. No ship in sight, just the blue sea and what they believed was freedom. But at 25,000 feet, an HC-130J Super Hercules had been flying over the area since midnight. Its AM-APS-154 advanced surveillance radar swept 200 nautical miles and tracked hundreds of contacts. The operator flagged that target early in the morning. The speed didn't match a fishing vessel. The route strayed from normal lanes, and the AIS was off. 3 red flags. The sensor operator activated the Star Sapphire 380 HDC electro-optical system and from afar could count the engines, see the tarps, and distinguish the crew on deck. At 09:45, he noticed something decisive. The boat had stopped zigzagging and was heading north. Either they were overconfident or they were burning too much fuel. The tactical coordinator picked up the encrypted satellite phone. Kimball, eyes 1, target maintaining heading and speed 50. Recommend launching interdiction assets. The data was transmitted via Link 16 to the Combat Information Center, to the Joint Interagency Task Force South in Key West, and to the DEA liaison monitoring cartel patterns. The nearest ship was 200 miles away, too far to catch a vessel running at 50 knots. But further calculations weren't needed. At that speed, the boat would run out of fuel in 4 hours. A helicopter could launch, intercept, and engage while the Coast Guard ship closed the gap. The craft was heading north-northeast, likely toward a mothership or a rendezvous point on shore. The same cartel playbook: flee at full speed by day to take advantage of visual cover and blend into maritime traffic on radar. However, these smugglers had made a fatal error. They were operating within range of a unit with a proven solution for anyone who refused to stop. From a moving helicopter, hitting a running engine may seem impossible, but the Coast Guard's Heighten unit had done it 500 times. That day could be number 501. The MH-65E lifted off the flight deck at 11 o'clock, powered by 2 Ariel 122 CG engines of 853 HP each. Unlike the standard search and rescue configuration, the helicopter was modified for this mission. The pilot banked toward the interception point and climbed to 3,000 feet to optimize fuel. 20 minutes after takeoff, the co-pilot spotted the boat's wake, a white tail over half a mile long caused by 4 engines at full throttle. From 3 miles away, it looked as if someone had drawn a chalk line across the ocean. The smugglers kept zigzagging, unaware they had been tracked for hours. That pattern, 2 zigzags every 3 to 5 minutes, was characteristic of the cartel, effective against surface patrol boats that must correct course and burn fuel, but useless against a helicopter that maneuvers in 3 dimensions while the craft shifts side to side. The MH-65E simply flew in a straight line, cutting across the zigzag patterns the boat couldn't escape. Smash the like button if you love seeing military strategy in action. Inside the vessel, the smugglers were doing their math. 4 300 HP Mercury engines consume 25 gallons per hour each. That's 100 gallons an hour in total. With a 400-gallon tank and 2 hours of sprinting already behind them, they had burned through 200 gallons and had only about 2 hours of range left, maybe less due to the extra weight. At their current speed, the rendezvous with the mothership was still 3 hours away. Someone had miscalculated, or they were burning too much fuel. Physics was beginning to turn against them. The helicopter, on the other hand, had about 4 hours of endurance and could refuel on the Kimball if needed. This was no longer a chase, but a slow-motion, inevitable outcome. The pilot could afford to wait. They could not. The helicopter descended to 500 feet and positioned itself over the stern, about 500 meters away, out of effective small arms range, but in the perfect spot for what was coming. The pilot matched their speed and began the Coast Guard's mandatory warning phase. The technology arrived. The co-pilot activated the long-range acoustic device, or LRAD, capable of projecting messages up to 162 decibels, louder than a rocket launch at close range, and broadcast orders in English and Spanish. Stop your vessel. Prepare to be boarded. United States Coast Guard. The rotor created a hurricane over the boat. Water lashed everything. Chaos reigned. But the smugglers didn't slow down. To them, the equation was simple. 5 men, 2,800 pounds of contraband worth $42 million, and potential 20-year sentences each. Surrender was certain doom. Fleeing offered a slim chance of slipping into shallow waters or friendly territory. They gambled on that, unaware the helicopter above had dealt with fugitives many times before.
After 15 minutes of warnings, visual signals, and sirens without response, the pilot requested authorization for warning shots, and got it. The rules of engagement in international waters were clear. The gunner mounted the M240B, capable of 650 rounds per minute, and opened fire with warning bursts. Tracers and geysers of water exploded just yards from the bow. The metallic roar of the M240B left no doubt they were serious. Most smugglers surrender at this point, not these. They throttled up, engines screaming and propellers cavitating as they zigzagged, swinging port and starboard toward the helicopter. Against a fixed-wing aircraft, such tactics might work, but not against a helicopter that can pivot instantly. After 3 bursts of warning fire, it was clear these smugglers had chosen the hard way. Subjects non-compliant, the pilot reported. The order came back, authorized. The gunner swapped the M240B for a Barrett M107 .50 BMG semi-automatic rifle. Not just a change of weapon, but a shift from negotiation to engine neutralization. The gunner belonged to the Coast Guard's HITRON Tactical Helicopter Interdiction Squadron, based in Jacksonville, the only law enforcement aviation unit in the world authorized for what they call airborne use of force. HITRON crews are the predators of maritime combat. Since 1998, they've conducted more than 500 interdictions, seizing tens of millions of dollars in contraband and crippling cartel logistics routes. They are not regular Coast Guard aviators. They're trained specifically to disable engines from moving helicopters in marine conditions. Selection for HITRON starts with the top 1% of Coast Guard marksmen and gets even tougher from there. Candidates spend months at MSRT facilities, training on moving platforms in level 4 seas, 6-foot waves and 20-knot winds, learning to read ocean patterns and anticipate wave movement, and synchronize breathing with the helicopter sway. A typical course burns through about 5,000 rounds per gunner. The physics they master is unforgiving. The helicopter moves at 50 knots with pitch, roll, and yaw, while the boat also runs at 50 knots on a different vector. Waves add vertical oscillation to both platforms. Wind deflects bullets. Engine vibration degrades accuracy, and salt spray fogs optics. Most snipers operate from stable platforms against static targets. HITRON gunners have none of those advantages. Why aim for the engines? Sinking a boat can erase evidence and cause emergencies, but a powerless craft becomes a floating crime scene, ready to be processed. Engines are also big and fragile, aluminum blocks with precision parts that shatter under anti-material fire. One shot equals one disabled engine, without exceptions. The Barrett M107 weighs about 30 pounds, each round weighs 42 grams and leaves the barrel at 853 meters per second, delivering massive kinetic energy. Enough, for example, to punch through an inch of steel at 500 meters. Outboard motors, mostly aluminum, are practically paper against that. The targeting system combined an EOTech 553 holographic sight and an ANPEQ-2 laser designator. The holographic reticle appears to float, allowing the gunner to keep both eyes open while tracking the target. But at those ranges and conditions, technology only helps. The true edge is the shooter's experience, over 200 interdictions and thousands of training rounds, a muscle memory that compensates simultaneously for helicopter sway, target zigzags, and ocean swell. The first .50 round struck the powerhead of the starboard outer engine. The 300 HP Mercury didn't just stop,
it disintegrated. A cloud of fragments and oil burst as its internals blew outward. The boat's speed dropped from 50 to 38 knots instantly. They probably thought 3 engines could still save them, but that hope died with the second shot. The port outer engine took a hit midsection, severing fuel lines and wrecking the water pump. The engine stopped within seconds, and the boat, down to 25 knots, began to stagger through the waves. Aggressive maneuverability was gone. The third shot was nearly a work of art. The gunner, in a state of absolute focus, synced the helicopter's sway, the target's drift, the wind, and trigger pressure. The round punched through the starboard inner engine's lower unit and exited through the power head, ripping out most of its internals. The craft barely limped along at 2 knots, struggling with a single motor meant for 4. The fourth shot ended all hope of escape. The last Mercury exploded in a rain of metal and oil. The .50 caliber round turned kinetic energy into pure mechanical devastation. The boat went from struggling forward to completely dead in the water, without propulsion or escape. The smugglers, trapped in the middle of the sea, were likely wondering whether federal prison was better than swimming 200 miles to shore. The helicopter held position while the Kimball deployed the welcoming committee. 2 7-meter rigid hull inflatable boats powered by 470 horsepower diesel engines, advancing at 45 knots. Each carried 6 maritime special operations operators, trained for hostile boardings. Level 4 buoyant body armor, M4A1 carbines with EOTech holographic sights, and a range of non-lethal weapons completed their kit. The first rib approached at an oblique angle. The coxswain maneuvered with precision despite the waves. At 10 meters, the lead operator stood on the bow aiming a Barrett M9 at the smugglers. A simple 9mm may not impress on paper, but with the muzzle aimed squarely at you, no dictionary explains its meaning better. The order, rapid and sharp in Spanish, was clear. Hands up, all on your knees, the universal language of maritime interdiction. The 5 men froze among the tarps hiding their load. The second rib appeared on the starboard flank, adding 6 more rifles to the equation. 12 weapons on 5 criminals reconsidering their life choices. With hands raised and shuffling toward the bow, the smugglers surrendered. But the boat was a bigger problem. Under international maritime law, it had become a stateless vessel. Its fate would be a Viking funeral. The team doused the deck and hull with accelerant, probably the boat's own fuel, and without ceremony, an operator tossed a flare. On contact, the vessel turned into $1 million bonfire. The crew watched the flames for hours until the hull sank beneath the waves. Only then did they escort the smugglers and their cargo to the nearest U.S. port for processing. Don't forget to share this video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from.